Yo, what's up guys, it's Talon, and I am a 5-role Sovereign, all in solo queue, all in the same season, and because of that, I feel like I'm very qualified to rank all of the roles in terms of carry potential in solo queue. So we're just going to go right in talking about each role and its carry potential in solo queue, which are the best and which are the worst. Before I do that, I want to make it very clear that you can climb with every role. I've literally gotten Sovereign on every role in solo queue, all on different accounts. So very clearly, you can climb on whatever role you're best at, but I do want to, obviously as a 5-role Sovereign, I think it can be pretty valuable to give you guys information on which are best and worst to climb. But again, definitely play the role you're best at overall. So getting right into it, you can see here we have support as the first role, or as the worst role rather. We're obviously going to go in reverse order. So the worst role is support, and the real reasons for that, simply put, is that you don't deal damage. Like, because you don't deal damage, you always have to have someone else doing the damage for you. No matter what, someone else on your team has to be good. If you're playing actually literally any of the other 4 roles, you don't have to rely on a specific person. But no matter how good you play on support, no matter how many plays you make, you do at the end of the day have to rely on someone else. And a lot of people will tell me, well, Talon, why don't you just play Lux support or Brand or whatever carries Swain? Well, these champions, it doesn't really make sense to play them there. You can play Lux mid, you can play Swain mid, and then you have more gold. So even if you are playing a carry in the support role, you have less gold in the support role. So you're still going to carry less because you just can't farm early game. And you just can't, again, get as much gold. You don't get to carry as hard. So even if you do want to play carry roles, which I don't recommend, because why wouldn't you just play another role? It's still going to be problematic. And then if you do play non-carry champions, then again, that lack of damage can be a bit of an issue, especially in lower ranks. The higher rank you go, the more you can kind of rely on your teammates. But overall, it can still be pretty rough. And then you can't push out waves the same way either. A lot of, supports, they do lack wave clear, which means, for example, if I'm trying to push out a wave before Dragon, it's going to take me an extra 10 seconds compared to playing a different role as a Thresh, for example. And then you just, it's harder to set up. So you have to be a lot more team fight focused, but you don't get that luxury of pushing out the waves or farming or kind of all those things that other roles are usually able to do. And then duos can kind of screw you over. Is sort of going to be the last real point. And the reason that's kind of important is because let's say that I'm a Sovereign support and I'm really good at support, but I lane against a Sovereign duo. Well, they're going to have more coordination, and then my Grandmaster ADC, for example, he's going to, not really be nearly as coordinated with me. He's probably not going to understand the game as well. And so oftentimes you can play really well, and you can still kind of be screwed over because, again, you're not, obviously, duo, we're talking about solo queue, and when you're laning with someone else, you kind of have to rely on them to some extent. So overall, that's going to be why support is number 5 in terms of carry potential in solo queue. Okay, and next up we have Baron lane. So the first reason that Baron lane is a bit lower too is going to be because you don't really get to impact other parts of the map in the first 6 minutes. Like, the first 6 minutes of your game is largely focused on your lane phase, and the only way you can really spread your lead is if your jungler decides to gank you most of the time, or by giving vision to your teammates. So like pushing the wave and then warding a jungle camp. So you have just a limited amount of impact early, and again, that lack of control is definitely going to be a problem for solo queue, because if you can trust your teammates, then you can be more keen on carrying later. But if you're not able to get past the early game where your teammates sometimes will just feed, it's going to be a bit hard sometimes. You also have to clear sides more rather than just being able to fight. So for example, if I'm a mid laner, I clear the mid wave, I get to go and fight because the mid wave is, by wherever any fight can go. If they're fighting top side, I'm mid, I go and I rotate top. If they're fighting bot, I push mid, I rotate bot. But as a top laner, I could be pushing my top lane wave, and then they're fighting on the far bot side of the map, and I just have to accept that they're going to die, or that fight, I can't control it. So you just have less control over fights, you have less control over the early game, and that's kind of some of the reasons that Baron lanes is still a little bit lower. However, it is higher than support because you have access to gold and carry potential. For example, you can see in this game right now on your screen, you can still dominate the heck out of your lane opponent, and then that gold goes on to you. Like, I get the gold, I get the turret plates, I get so much, and I will have, a lot of carry potential. So you can develop that lead in the first 6 minutes of the game. You can individually gap a laner, and if you're a good enough player, you will get a lane lead against nearly everyone if you play properly. And then past 6 minutes, you can spread that lead very well. So you do have a lack of control to some extent in the early game, but the later on you go and the larger the gap is between you and your opponent, the better it's going to be. Because again, I would say that Baron lane is really, really good for carrying when there's an extremely large gap between you and your laner, because you're going to get a huge lead. But if there's only a very small gap and you're just slightly better than your laner, he's usually going to be able to just go down to 300 gold. And again, because you lack that control early game, that's going to be a bit more problematic compared to other roles. It's also easier to get countered. Like in Baron lane, if you get countered as a melee champion by whatever, you have a big issue, because no matter how bad the player is, if I'm playing Jace and they're playing Garen, they're probably going to be able to, you know, survive the lane and then just be pretty useful anyway because they're a Garen, for example. So there's more champions that can kind of just what I call stonewalling you, which is basically, you know, they can just sit there and not die, freeze the wave on you, and like there's not a lot you can do. There are things you can do, and obviously, you know, I have plenty of videos on kind of how to beat these types of things, but it's just more difficult compared to carrying from other roles. Easier to get countered, stonewalled, that type of thing. But you do have the ability to deal damage and to draw a lot of pressure, which is why, again, it's better than support overall, but still going to be lower than the other roles that we'll go into now. Okay, so next up we have ADC. So this one's pretty simple. You can always carry on ADC. You can always get gold, you'll always deal damage, and you'll always be useful in a fight if you are a good enough player. All you need is your team to not completely feed. Like at the end of the day, if I am playing ADC, I am 99% confident that almost every game I'm going to have either a lane lead or be even in lane, and I'm going to outfarm my lane opponent throughout the game, because I'm going to understand that objectives aren't the most valuable thing in the world. What's important is getting gold, getting turrets, and setting up for that Baron fight, being strong enough. And if you understand these things, you can always carry, and then it comes down to playing fights well. And if you properly spell track, you have good positioning, good camera control, and just basically simple, good mechanics, this role is simple and easy to carry on. The issues are the lack of agency throughout the game. So similar kind of, sort of, to how we said that Baron lane lacks agency by not being able to impact the map, ADC does to a lesser extent as well, because unlike a support, you're sort of tied to getting gold and more to farming and getting your lane, getting your own gold. So you don't get to impact some of your laners as, you know, hard, or as a jungler in mid, of course, you don't get to gank them as hard. So you just lack a little bit of agency. And of course, you are, yes, you're dealing the damage, but you don't get to make the engages. So you don't get to make the plays for your team. You don't get to decide who goes in and when they go in and why they go in. So you are really, really good at getting gold and dealing damage, but you also have to be patient and ultimately just play with the cards you're dealt, rather than, again, some of the other roles that we'll talk about, mid and jungle. You kind of have more of that agency. So again, you have really good carry potential. If you know how to farm well, you're always going to be useful in a game, but that lack of agency means that it's going to be below some of the other roles overall. Okay, so then second we have mid lane. So mid lane really just has the ability to impact all lanes, which is extremely important. From minute one, you are able to already have impact on other lanes, because you can early push and then get a ward for your jungler. You can already give really easy information for your jungler. You can help your jungler on scuttle. If you're winning lane and you have prio, that's going to help you win the game very, very, you know, much. Or you can abuse the enemy who over roam, because oftentimes people over roam and then you can get big gold leads on them. So not only do you have the you know, potential to roam and impact other parts of the map, but it's also very easy to abuse people who don't understand this role well, because they'll over roam and over try to impact stuff, and then you can get your own lead. So you can be selfish, you can be supportive, you have a lot of variety in playstyle. You have your carry mages, you have your ADCs mid, you have your roaming, you know, mages, burst mages like Ahri, you have your assassins. You just have so many different playstyles that you can play, which means you can always be good in any game. If you need a tank, if you need a squishy carry, if you need AP, you need AD, there's always options in mid lane, which just makes it really, really good for carrying solo queue games. And you get to help the jungle a lot. Like, you get to make a lot of plays 2v2 with your jungle, or 3v3 with your jungle and your support. You just have a lot of ability to play with a lot of different players and make a lot of different, again, impact throughout the map, which means you get to choose who you want to play around. You don't have to go rotate to your 0-6 bot lane for no reason who are feeding. You can go and focus on your own gold, or play around your 2-0 top laner, or do whatever makes the most sense in the game. You just have that additional control. And again, because you have variety in champions, it means you have agency, because you can play the engaged champions who, you know, again, get to decide how you engage or when you engage, or you can play the carry champions who get to dictate the pace of the team fights because they farm really well. And if you have a lot of gold, then you obviously have the ability to carry. And then you also have easy access to gold around the map. It's very easy to push a mid wave, go into a side lane, get that side lane gold, go back, and just kind of cycle between two, you know, lanes and get as much gold as possible. It's a lot easier than when I'm in Baron lane, for example. It's going to be harder to get as much gold because you have to go from Baron lane, then into the mid, and usually mid's getting pushed by a lot of people kind of overgroup in mid lane. And so you can also abuse that overgrouping in mid lane by side laning really well. So you just have so many different ways to impact, so much carry potential. And then the last thing is, this is the one differentiation between jungle that's positive for mid, because mid and jungle obviously are the top two, mid a little bit worse. But the one really positive thing is you get to lane. And because you get to lane, it means you can outplay someone harder. So let's say you're a mid laner and your enemy mid laner sucks. Like, he's just way worse than you. You're going to solo kill him. You're going to get huge gold leads, and you're going to individually gap him. But if the enemy jungler sucks way more than you, you can out macro him, but you can't out mechanics him that much. Like, you're not going to get to fight him as much. You're not interacting. Like, for the first 2 minutes of a jungle, you're full clearing. For the first 2 minutes of a mid laner, you're laning, which means you have the ability to solo kill and potentially have an even larger gap. So as the mid laner, you can potentially gap even larger compared to a jungler. But of course, jungle is going to have its own things, and we're going to get into that now. Okay, and finally we have jungle. And so the first reason that jungle is just so good for carrying is access to all of the gold on the map. As a jungler, you have an insane amount of access to gold from your camps, but then not only your camps, but you can easily farm waves as well. Like, you are totally fine to farm waves as a jungler past 6 minutes once, you know, you get max gold from it. And it's just super OP the amount of gold that you have access to compared to any other role. Way easier to just farm and farm and farm on this role. Additionally, you get to impact every lane, and you get to choose who you impact. So if you have a really strong early game laner, you can hard play around them and abuse their early game matchup and help them snowball super hard. Or if you have some weak early game laners that have no agency, no ability to make plays, no engage, you can ignore them and just let them scale up if you know they're in a matchup that they can scale up fine into. Or you can make sure that your hard carry scaling champion gets some extra help early game to make sure they get through the lane. So you can, if you have good awareness, pay attention to all the different lane states and really make sure that all of your teammates have a relatively easy time getting through the early game if they're seeming to be competent. And then you can ignore the idiots, which is always nice. I mean, we hate idiots, right? So we can ignore the idiots, the ones who are feeding, who are flaming. When they're telling you that you need to gank them on jungle, the good thing is you don't have to listen to them. If you're thinking that your jungler should gank you, but you're another role, well, that's too bad. But if you're the jungler, you can just not gank them, and then you get to impact the lane more, or like the lanes that matter more. Obviously, sometimes you get trolled, but that happens in any role. Nothing you can really do about that. You have access to just a bunch of agency too, like not only in the early game, but later on in the game. You get to decide where your teammates go and win because you have the smite. So if my teammates want to contest the dragon, but I have the smite, they're not going to contest the dragon without me most of the time. Again, I know, low elo, sometimes they do. Don't get me wrong, I've played in low elo, I am aware of this, but generally speaking, you're a lot less likely for your teammates to go and fight a fight that you don't want to fight as jungle compared to other roles. Because you have that smite, and without you, the game just doesn't really progress the same way. So you get to choose when we go to Baron, when we go to Dragon, and you have access to smite. I'm sure we've all lost games where our jungler chokes a smite for no reason, right? When it's really easy, they lose it to a random, you know, Morgana puddle or whatever. The difference is you're the one who gets to control that. So if you're someone who has generally pretty good smiting, you just get that additional control, which is again another reason that jungle has so much carry potential. And then you can also gap the enemy jungler very hard through efficient pathing. So it's very easy to abuse inefficient pathing in the jungle role. So anytime you're playing against an enemy, even if they get fed early game, it doesn't matter if they're pathing inefficiently and they don't really know how to farm properly. So just having an additional game understanding compared to the enemy jungle it is really, really important compared to, again, if we understand the game better than the enemy support, oftentimes they can just lock in Lulu and kind of follow their teammate around. So that the agency, the access to a bunch of gold, impacting all of the different lanes, having access to smite, making it very easy to gap you know, bad, inefficient players as well. All of these things are kind of why jungle as a whole is super, super important and super easy and strong in terms of carrying. And then lastly, the champions. You have access to carry bruisers. I would call a champion like Vi, Wukong, Xin Zhao, Lee Sin. They're like bruisers that can actually carry the game. They're not just a bruiser who's just tanky and nothing else. They can actually fully carry the game. And then you have access to assassins. Obviously, champions like Kha'Zix, like kind of Viego, a bunch of different assassins that you can play that can really hard carry games. And again, you have access to tanks. You can play AP champions. There's plenty of AP champions that are fine. There's just so much different variety as well. A lot of the champions also have good engage potential, which is very important. So again, just overall, jungle has pretty much everything you could ask for in a carry role and is by far the best. To reiterate, the best role to carry is jungle, the second best is mid lane, then ADC, then Baron lane, and support. Overall, the worst, in my opinion. In my opinion, has never been wrong in the history of ever, so pretty good opinion, trust me, guys. But yeah, I hope that this was valuable to you. If you liked it, then, you know, maybe like the video if you want. In general, if you guys are interested, I'm going to have a video soon on what my content's going to be like next season. I'm making a couple videos, you know, some of these videos around the fact that we got 5-role Sovereign before the season ends, and then we'll kind of have, again, very specific content that will be focused on helping you guys improve, and we'll have a video kind of describing what that is and how you can best learn from my videos, probably right before the season starts or so. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.